Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. Tonight we are privileged to have as our guest Brandan Burns. Co-hosting with me is Bill Hannon and Mariah Almonte. Brandan is a very eclectic young man who studies shamanism, yoga, and Buddhism. A lot
of everything. A lot of everything. Life covers about all of it, I think.
Yes, yes.
In general, yeah.
What got you started on this path?
Well, that's an interesting question. I suppose that it was a series of catalytic events in my life. Trauma, a lot of suffering typically is involved with the beginning of a spiritual journey. And my story is no different. And it led me to seek truth and to seek understanding and to seek ultimately myself. And I didn't know that in the beginning, but that's ultimately what I've always been looking for and what I feel that we're all looking for in anything that we seek.
And I know from chatting earlier, you said your journey began about 5 years ago, silently in private.
Yes.
And what caused you to reach out after a couple of years?
Well, after a few years, I just of studying and reading and learning and doing some solitary practicing, I was just eventually led to spiritual community, and I've been sharing and offering various things that I've picked up along the way with people as I go. So it's been and it is continuing to be a beautiful.
So do you find a lot of the things are starting to come together for you, seeing how you're looking at it from different points of view and getting a good foundation in several disciplines? Do you find that things are kind of coming together and building a strong foundation for your understanding?
Absolutely. I feel like every philosophy and theology that humankind has ever seen or created has a piece of the puzzle, so to speak. And what resonates with me, I pick up and I take along the way, and everything leads to the next. And it's following that synchronicity or the inner guidance that we come into relationship with. That is really a huge part of this process for me. Yeah. And what I intend to catalyze in other people is the remembering of the teacher within, the higher self, the divine within. So.
And in front of us today we have some crystal bowls that are traditionally a part of Tibetan healing practices.
Yes.
And how did you, in your pathway, how did you come upon them? Because of the healing?
I actually experienced a sound bath whenever I was operating a small spiritual community center myself called the Light of Being. That was a little tiny spot in the South Providence. It was a fun little project of mine. But I experienced a sound bath there, and I was just deeply moved by the experience, and I knew immediately that this was something that I was very deeply drawn to involve myself in, and eventually it fell into place that I would be sharing it in this way. So,
because you brought the bowls, a drum,
I have a little rain stick,
a rain stick, and a very handsome didgeridoo.
Thank you.
Well, they're all handsome.
Yes.
Let me ask you, if you don't mind now, you mentioned that something that really kind of turned the key for you was that you experienced the sound bath. What were the instruments that were actually used in that particular ceremony?
They were used. They used drums and rattles, and there was a gong, there was bells and chimes, and there was crystal bowls. There was brass Tibetan traditional bowls. The human voice. I've always been a singer, and I've been drawn to various schools of practice that involve the use of voice.
Right. It is an instrument.
It certainly is. It's the one I'm most proficient with. And so, yeah, I mean, I use a lot of different instruments myself, basically whatever comes to me, whatever is shown to me. A lot of these were gifts or things that I picked up along the way, and I continue to build that collection of objects, but the ultimate tool is my intention, and it's just I channel my own higher self and the field that we're all connected to through these instruments to catalyze that remembering beyond the cognitive rational mind. It's something that is felt on a very deep internal level.
Yeah, it's experienced.
Absolutely.
Well, music is frequency,
Certainly.
and that can be experienced at the deepest levels within us, because our very essence is frequency.
Earlier you were, what do you say, playing the bowls, and I felt the resonance in my chest area. And could you explain what that was, or you explained what the bowls
Yes,
do?
a lot of the notes that are played through these bowls, and really anything, they resonate to a certain part of our energy body, and these instruments are intended to break up density that is in the energy body and permit us to have another opportunity to acknowledge and to feel and to be with whatever created that density in the first place, which tends to be oppressing,
Stagnant.
right? Oppressing or repressing or not acknowledging or denying aspects of our being that we felt as though they were unworthy or wrong or bad, and this is an opportunity to integrate those back into our being and become more whole. When the vibration breaks that up and brings it to the surface, oftentimes people will experience, after the sound healing sessions, they'll experience a surfacing of these old habitual patterns and emotions and thoughts that they thought that they were long over, and they resurface to be integrated. And sound healing also has tremendous benefit for stress relief and pain relief and inducing various states of meditative consciousness, which promotes awareness and just a general sense of connectedness and well-being. So it's a many-faceted, very multi-dimensional experience in all ways.
So on a physical level, your organs resonate then with the sound.
Yes, absolutely, and not just the organs,
And
but the etheric aspects of the body. Like, for instance, these are in tune to the chakras. This is the heart and the throat chakra here that are attuned to these, and together they make a third frequency, which is called a heterodyne, and they really create a very liberating connection between those two aspects of our being that are represented by those.
All right, well, see,
chakras.
now this is interesting what you just said. Let me ask you this. Could you maybe get a tone out of one and then tone out of another, and then maybe both together? Is that what you were just saying about? Is that what you...
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
yes. This bowl right here, you can hear this tone. This is the heart. This resonates with the heart.
See?
And then I can stop this, and we hear this separately. And this resonates to the throat. And then whenever they're made together, and that third frequency arises from the interaction.
Right.
And I find that the number 3 is extremely powerful.
Right.
And that third piece is very liberating and very
It's
powerful.
liberating also, but it's also
Very
a good
cosmic.
foundation
Yeah.
too. It's a good solid geometric for stability.
Absolutely.
Right.
Is that a separate striker? A different striker?
Yes, some of them are hollow and some of them are solid, and those have varying effects with the weight. And I like one of each. So
Could we hear the difference?
it might be very subtle. It's more, I think, in the realm of like how it's used.
This one's different.
Yeah, they're very beautiful.
All right. Now, I know sometimes it has a significance, and sometimes it's just the experience alone. Like Mariah mentioned before, you were playing one of them and she felt it in her chest. I felt this more on the left side than on the right side. Is there a significance?
Well, the left side of the body is it corresponds to the feminine principle and
Right.
the receiving
Right.
aspect of your body.
Okay.
And that just might have been, I'm not going to define that experience for you,
Sure,
but
sure.
that piece of information might be
Mhm.
beneficial. But they're certainly, they're made by machines. The traditional ones are hand pounded, and it's a really fine example for me of a way that we can use, our technology to, to benefit ourselves and one another and the planet.
Right.
Rather than, I mean, science is a powerful tool. It's just as much as spiritualism.
Sure.
And the marriage of the two is what I'm kind of pointing to or moving towards, is where we will really flourish as a species, I find. And I find that it's the integration of the rational and the intuitive, the masculine and the feminine, and the scientific and the spiritual that will really create that deep wholeness experience of life that we can all share together and here and live with the earth and live with one another instead of off of one another.
Right.
Well, there are components within each and every one of us.
Certainly.
And, to ignore one component, is ignoring a part of ourselves.
Right. It's fragmenting. And
Practically-
separation isn't seeming, pardon me.
But practically speaking, how do I integrate with my maleness? Or are you talking about that's within each of us?
Right,
Male and
right.
female within each of us.
Well, from the yogic perspective, the masculine aspect of reality is denoted by consciousness, and the feminine principle is energy or form. And consciousness and form, they play, and that's the play of life, and they ultimately want to merge. So it's like your thinking mind is the masculine aspect of your being, and your animal body is the feminine principle, the energy and the consciousness playing together. And oftentimes in our culture, I find that we're really imbalanced to the masculine, where we live a lot in our heads and we listen very little to the wisdom of our body. And the coming at the age of Aquarius that we're currently in, and we're seeing all this upheaval in the world and all of these changes that are occurring, is a direct response to the powerful, wild, feminine uprising, and its form coming and asserting its existence.
Right. It wants
Our intuition is emerging.
Right.
Yeah.
Our
The knowing rather than the
the believing.
rather than the learning.
Yeah.
the experiencing rather than just the
Experiencing
thinking.
rather
Right.
than
Yes.
right. It's based on your embodied personal experience that we're having here and now, and that is our intuition speaks to us through our body's sensations, and the practice of yoga is largely for me is largely geared around connecting oneself with the body and also coming into a different kind of relationship with one's mind as a tool and as a mechanism through which we can create. And that's ultimately what the mind is used for, whereas oftentimes we see it being misused in the sense that it's being used to control and to dominate and
Sure.
to
Absolutely.
resist and
Right.
ultimately to kill ourselves and the planet. And so it's coming back into balance because it's never left it. It's just our perception is coming back into alignment with that truth.
That's right. I have become more and more aware of how perception and even understanding things about the law and whatnot on what really is and what we think things are.
Right.
But one of the things I identified with as you were playing these two together, and then it brought like the third vibration into resonance, was I mentioned before I went to a school, and at the school there was one of the teachers there was actually a bowl player, and he had bowls that were that tall and this around all the way down to bowls that were smaller than these.
Yes.
And what I found very interesting was, each one of them had their own tone. But he'd be playing one, and then maybe third or fourth one down would start to resonate with the vibration, and it would just start singing by itself. It was reacting to the vibration from the first bowl. And I think in a way that's actually what's happening with us.
Yes.
We're reacting to that resonance
Yes.
that vibration.
It's coming from our sun, actually, primarily from the sun that we're all moving around. And it's actually coming from the central sun that's beyond that. So, I mean, like,
Okay, what is
like
the it we're talking about? The vibration?
we're talking about the vibrations that are affecting the entire world and the evolution of mankind in this day and age as we move into and deeper
Right.
into the age of Aquarius.
So what I was saying was, I picked up on a physical connection that I could identify with right away, because when he was playing one, another one further on down would start to resonate. And
Yes.
and so basically what you're saying is then, I mean, we're resonating with the vibration from the sun, with the frequency from the sun.
Yeah. Light and
Light.
sound are ultimately the same thing, but there's a masculine, feminine principle there at work as well.
Right.
Yes.
The same phenomenon happens with drums. If you beat one drum and you're holding a drum, your own drum starts to vibrate and resonate and respond.
That's one of the
Sometimes-
pardon.
I just, sometimes you can feel it going right through you.
Absolutely.
And in a way, you are a drum.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really love about this experience is it's a very tangible experience of energy. It's like people walk away like, with something that they can feel, they can share, they can say, I was there, I felt that. Like, and there's no denying it. It's not like there's a lot of trust and there's a lot of faith involved in a lot of psychospiritual experiences where you have to believe in order to have the experience. With sound healing, you can just go there, the most skeptical and closed individual, and you will leave having felt something. You will know that something happened, and it gives you always exactly what you need. And I move intentions through these vibrations, because ultimately that's all that vibration really is a carrier for intention. And the intention is to catalyze that deep remembering of our connection. And
I
of our
find that
unity.
interesting because you did mention at the beginning of the show, vibration and intention are very
Yes.
intimately
Yes.
connected.
Yes.
So when you start to do something, is it your intent to bring about a healing, or is it your intent to allow what's supposed to happen, or?
Well, I don't have to necessarily hold or create an intention because I've already done so in putting together the ceremony, but I do enter a meditative state, a trance state, and I call in all of my my spirit guides and ancestors, which are all just reflections of my own higher self. And I invite them to move through me in a creative fashion. And essentially, I'm just moving into a creative flow of intuition and just allowing myself through this process to be deeply healed and moved by that surrender. So this is a huge part of my own practice and a huge part of my own healing process. And I always tell people you can never offer another what you haven't yet offered yourself. And so I'm really doing these ceremonies for me, and it just happens to be like that cup that running over.
Sure.
And for everybody there also bearing witness to this experience is also moved in a similar
Right.
way.
Right.
So the intention is always to move deeper into self. So just by me doing it, the intention is present for me to offer that to everyone who is present.
Now, is there a difference in resonance between something like the crystal bowls, which are just vibrating, or the didgeridoo? What would you say?
Well, it just
With
creates
different
different kinds
frequencies?
of vibrations, yes, absolutely. The didge, for instance, it really resonates for me. This particular didge, I feel it very strongly in the second chakra, the sacral.
Right.
And
Creative.
right?
It's deep.
Absolutely. And then the drum is very root, very grounding,
Yes.
very
Yes. Right.
absolutely. And I
Right.
typically, the only structure that's involved in the ceremonies that I hold is I usually move from the bottom of the chakra system up.
Yes.
So I start with primitive instruments, and I move up to bells and brass bowls, and finally with crystal. And I use a lot of vocal transmission along the way, chanting and making animal sounds and whatever arises. Sometimes some really bizarre and interesting things come, and I just trust and
Right.
and keep doing it.
Right. As long as there's nobody there with a padded cell for you.
I don't even mind being recorded. I'm okay with it.
So could you give us a little sample then?
Certainly, yeah. I can
With the
make a
original
little
view?
sound with this. I'm going to prop it right here between these two, and they'll be just fine. It's all right.
Yeah, it was.
Quite different.
So the Aboriginals use this as the sonic driver. Every culture has
A sonic driver?
Yes, I'll explain that.
That
Sonic
sounds-
driver is an instrument. Wow, that works. It's an instrument that is used to achieve an altered state by aligning the brain waves with the frequency that allows you to converse with essentially the field of all that is, the ancestors, the spirits, your inner guidance. So this one has the combination of just the vibration and the breath, which I find is particularly awesome because, me being also a yogi, this is a really interesting and very powerful instrument for me on that front. But the Native Americans use the drum or the rattle, and some dance and some chant, or just something that gets you out of the rational mind and into that creative space of being open to information. So.
Right. Well, it's interesting also because, a few of us may have experienced like a drum ceremony or a drum in a Native American presentation.
Style, yeah.
But then it's also very different when you're doing a guided meditation with somebody, or you're taking them down 7 levels to meet the creator snake. It's just so interesting to hear and to start identifying, and you start to resonate with that frequency, and you just kind of just slip right into it.
Yes. Well, see, on a very scientific level, a lot of these frequencies, they induce meditative states known as alpha and even theta brainwave activity. And alpha, essentially what it does is it calms and quiets the conscious mind and allows the subconscious, and even in theta, the superconscious, to begin to emerge. And it allows you to really deprogram and reprogram all of the unconscious behavioral patterns that occur, that make up a lot of our daily activities that we're unaware of. So whenever people are in that very deep state, I'm oftentimes adding affirmations and little pieces of information, oftentimes in the form of chanting or even in direct spoken word, that are catalyzing that deep remembering of our connection to one another and the oneness of all things. Because I feel like it's really quite simple. If we recognize that there is nothing outside of self, that everything that we experience is a reflection of oneself, then who can we harm and what can we harm if we really truly understand that separation is only in seeming. And that is the main intention that moves through all of these, and that's I just take that one home to the heart every time. And just being present with the sounds and with the sensations that are arising.
You just sit with it and just let it unfold.
Right. So that's one of the beautiful things about the sound, is it gives the mind something to focus on. It gives us a reference point to drop right into the moment.
That's true. It is a reference point.
Right. So a lot of people, they report being able to relax like they never have before. They report being able to enter meditative states in a way that they've never done before. I've had people, with chronic pain experience a tremendous release. I've had people who were, I've even had a woman who didn't have her menstrual cycle for 7 years. Her cycle began after it. So really powerful, miraculous, interesting stuff that I couldn't have planned for or intended unfolds just through that single intention to just bring ourselves home to ourselves. And a lot of people feel.
Well, let me ask you this then. Could you have the drum right there? Maybe Josie could just pass it to you.
That drum is actually it requires heat. It requires itself to be warmed in order for it to play. Okay. So I brought it because I like to keep her with me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's one of my, Luna is the name of my drum, and she's one of my most powerful allies. You can see here when she's cold, she has the face like the moon. It looks like the ripply moon.
That's very interesting.
She has a crone face.
Yeah, she does. That's exactly, you picked right up on that, didn't you? And she has a very strong crone energy that I channeled through here too, which is that wise woman, that very powerful ancient force of knowing, and so strong connection with the moon here as well. So
Oh, and a beautiful
Yeah.
tying
I
job
actually- I
on the
made that
back.
drum,
You
actually.
did.
Yes, I did.
I could tell.
Yeah.
I just
That is
want to
beautiful.
show
Yeah.
it's a bit,
that's a Lakota weave. That's what that is
but it
called.
reminds me of yin and yang. The
Right.
Absolutely. It's got a beautiful flow. I use that drum for casting divination. I use that
For what?
casting divinations. I take
Oh,
a
What do
casting
you-
divinations. Okay,
what
I
do you
missed the
cast
diva.
with?
well, I take a number of. I have 13 objects that are given to me from nature, and I have an intention or a question that the person comes with, and depending on where they land in correspondence to one another, and in correspondence to the directions, the cardinal
Oh, hence
directions.
the casting.
Certainly, yes. We
Okay.
cast it into the drum circle, and then
Okay.
based on where they land, we get a lot of really interesting and very staggeringly accurate information. It's always lots of fun to see how that stuff plays out. It's just one of the ways that we can tap into our knowing through these objects, which are really just symbols. They're projections and emanations of our own consciousness.
All right. All right,
So-
well, that's good now. I mean, we've been talking about things that have a constant tone to them, or a strong, deep tone, or something that we can set up rhythmically. But the rain stick, I mean, that to me sounds very different in everything that you've talked about so far. What is the relevance of, oh, really?
Rain stick is like
Does it have anything to do with emotion?
it does.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
it's got a very
Yes.
strong water connection for me. It's it's washing away. It's like it's got a
Right.
very oftentimes I'll use that after a serious building of energy comes up to just kind of it brings it down. It
Right.
helps to a lot of that energy we want to process on a energetic level rather than in a physical or an emotional or mental level, so that a lot of the healing can occur in a very gentle and very painless way.
Right.
And that's I'm not really big on the idea that we have to suffer to make progress. Or that
Oh,
we have
no.
So do
I-
people go to you for a cleansing, so to speak, or a washing away?
Sound
Well,
healing.
Certainly,
What?
yeah. I hold
Yeah.
sound healing ceremonies, but I also have a private energy healing practice. And I do, people come, they may come for that purpose, but they leave with something different. Because I
Right.
offer, what I'm offering is not the idea that you're broken or need to be fixed, but that you're already whole, and that all that needs to change is that our perspective on that. So yes, energetically there's a lot of purification and cleansing that occurs, but it's really just a shifting of perspective. These are all symbols for something that is moving in your consciousness.
So when you say perspective, you actually mean shifting of awareness.
Absolutely. Perception, awareness,
Right,
perspective, all
right.
these things are synonymous.
Right. So do you mind if I just hand this to you so the viewers can hear what...
Please.
I've used these before, but it's
Yes.
they're very interesting.
Yeah, and I bring these right over the body of a person, and sometimes I'll blow through it, and these are all just symbolic gestures and movements that really just unlock something
Right.
that is occurring on an energetic level.
Right.
For me, it's like a symbol for me that allows me to tap into the movement of what is occurring.
I want to thank you because we've
Thank you.
come to just about the end of the
Thank
program.
you. It was a pleasure.
And if there was one thing you would like to tell our audience about sound, for instance.
Everything is vibration, and if we change the way that we vibrate, then our reality, the reality that we attract and thus create, it changes. So all that's needed is a shift in perspective, and that's what's happening naturally. There's nothing we can do to stop it or change it. This is something that's inherently occurring with the times. So
And
Thank you for helping me, and Bill, Mariah,
thank you.
thank you.
and please come back.
I certainly will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.